Hello and welcome to today's video. Gather some snacks and water and enjoy the video. Today we'll be asking the question of how do I make a good original character? As you watch this video, try to keep this question in mind because we will be answering it over the course of the video. Personally, I've been creating characters for a really long time, as I assume many artists do. From when I was younger to now in my early 20s, I'm still creating characters and stories. It could be a small little story or whole worlds created around one character. I want to share with you my process for my character building, so while this video is mostly aimed at artists, since that's what I am personally, whether you create art of your characters, build them in video games, or write their stories down, I hope this video can help you on your character creating journey. I'll be going over my own personal process, essentials of world building, and some tips and tricks I've learned through the years. I've been an artist for my whole life and have a degree in fine art, so it's safe to say I'm passionate about this. Despite that, this video is just my opinion based on my own experience creating characters. When thinking about world building, there are a lot of things that come into play. Setting, history, culture are all important aspects to keep in mind. Let's look at one of the most appraised world builders, Tolkien. There will be no spoilers here for Lord of the Rings, we will just be looking at 3 components of the world building and how we can learn from that. The history of the world plays a massive role in the plot alone and creates context for the journey Frodo is taking. Tolkien also takes care to tell us about castles and locations long forgotten, allowing us to see the richness of Middle-earth. The culture of Middle-earth is clearly laid out. The elves live in a high society, the hobbit lives a simple life, and the other races barely consider them. Again, this gives us context to the world of our main character, and lets us see the nature of each character we may encounter in the future. Setting can play a huge role in world building, and Tolkien achieves this beautifully. Mordor is completely different to the Shire is completely different to Isengard, with each area having its own distinct culture and history, further pushing the context of the world our main character is exploring. So how can we learn from this? We'll first think about whether you're building your world around a character or a character around a world. I'm not sure which would be better, but for the character you see I'm drawing here, I created the world in one drawing and then drew the character in another. I wasn't aware at the time that these 2 drawings would merge for me as I was drawing. I wasn't thinking of a story. For me, it was a slow process of illustrating different things for different reasons. I'll go over my process for this a little bit later, but first I want to look at how we can learn from Tolkien. He created multiple locations and multiple races. This alone leaves a lot up for grabs in terms of how the races interact with each other and how each location is distinguished from the other. How do the locations in history and even the race of the character impact their story and in turn their design? At the time, this particular drawing was just me wanting to practice backgrounds and illustrating a story at the same time. This is where I first made the mask. I didn't want to draw her face, so I gave her the mask. That's honestly it. Even then, I was thinking about her character. Where is she going? Why is she wearing that? Etc, etc. My next goal was wanting to practice perspective. At the time, I wasn't thinking much about a cohesive story, but creating the overgrown grocery store made me want to explore that concept more, which led me to Ethel's. Ethel's ultimately became the drawing that solidified my world for my characters. I thought a lot about this drawing. I wanted it to be an overgrown diner. I wanted 2 characters that ultimately I decided were brother and sister. I knew I wanted them in roller skates because I like the question it poses, which is why they're wearing them and where are they going. After this, I slowly build up other locations, characters and stories. So who are they? They are a race of fairies. The fairies used to live in the clouds until an evil queen came and stripped them of their wings. This caused the fairies to fall to an overgrown earth where the humans are assumed long gone. Some, but not all fairies, kept their magical powers. It takes a lot of energy to use these powers though, because their wings are what connected them to that magic. For some, the magic moved to their hair, some their eyes. They wear masks due to the innate fear that something is hunting them. They only take their masks off when they don't feel that ominous presence around them. So how many characters have I created for this world? 4. I have a brother and sister duo and a couple duo. For now, the couple are the only fairies with magic, and that's it really. I know the evil queen is wearing the wings of her victims and she is harnessing the magic of them, but I haven't drawn her yet. But I've also drawn multiple locations, streets, train stations, diners, etc, etc. I've been enjoying drawing them so much and I can't wait to explore their stories more. So that's the history of the world I've created and the characters in it. I don't have names for them yet. I've been referring to them as Kitsune, Bunny, brother and sister. There's also minute details to consider when I was designing these characters, such as their silhouettes, style, colour palette. For the Kitsune and Bunny, I knew I wanted the Kitsune to have magic. She has a jellyfish hairstyle and generally dresses in dark academia style clothes. This is because she is always tired and can't fight much, in contrast to the Bunny, who dresses in tech wear and is scarred on her face and mask. She is always prepared to protect Kitsune. For this drawing specifically, I wanted to revisit my overgrown grocery store with the skills that I have now. I wanted to explore the design of my sister fairy, and I also wanted to improve my perspective from the previous year. While I was drawing this, I had a fairly good visualization of what I wanted. I did rely heavily on the reference picture for the pose, but I found multiple different references and put them together in a mood board. I used the Apple app Free Flow to do this. I had to organise them by grocery store, foliage and character references. I wanted the store to be completely overgrown with multiple different light sources around her. I also like when my drawings have questions, so I kept this in mind, such as what's in her backpack, what is she grabbing from the shelf, why is the store overgrown, that kind of thing. So as I'm drawing, I'm keeping all of this in the back of my head. Usually when I'm doing line art, I keep it all on the same layer, but I did experiment a little bit with this drawing by keeping certain elements of the line art separated. What this allowed me to do was to select the outside of my line art, then invert it so that when the drawing was finished, I could reselect that section of the drawing and change the saturation or brightness, etc., independently from the rest of the drawing. This means once the drawing is done and I think the character blends in too much to the background, I can easily add in an overlay layer just to the character to bring her forward. I generally decide on a colour palette after I do the line art. I tried a couple different variations for this one, but ultimately landed on the blue and red colour palette quick enough. Lately I've been using the Procreate colour palette tool to create palettes from photos I like on Pinterest. I know what you're thinking, that's cheating, real artists mix colours from memory. Maybe, but if the tool is there, I'm happy to use it. I still have to place the colours and create the composition and lighting. For the brush I was using for the line art and the rendering, it's mostly the brush I created for my witch drawing I posted on Halloween. You should check that video out if you're interested in more character design videos. The type of brush you use to draw your character will change the outlook of the drawing. For this world, everything is quite gritty and rough, so I wanted a brush to reflect that. If I was drawing a dainty soft character, I'd use a softer, smoother brush. For other choices I made when creating this art, I kept in mind that I wanted multiple light sources. Initially, I didn't know where they would be, which is bad. You should always know that. But ultimately, as I was sketching, I thought light from behind would suit the character most and set the mood the best. As I was doing the line art, there's a very specific spot I wanted the window of the machine to hit on her arm to create the exact light I was looking for. As I was moving on to the rendering, I thought it looked flat, which is why it's so important to know your light sources. I was able to add glowing mushrooms to add another level of contrast and source of light, but if I had known from the beginning what source of light I wanted, I could have potentially pushed it further. For me, I like to make my drawings of these characters dark and moody with some sort of neon light lighting them up. I like the juxtaposition of them being tattered and running for their lives in this gorgeous, overgrown and colourful world. Meanwhile, the story itself is quite dark. You could decide you want your characters to wear the same thing and have the same colour palette every time you draw them, but for me, I like to experiment, so I made sure to give them recognisable features. For example, the brother and sister have green hair and kitsune masks. Their hairstyle stays the same when I draw them, and I will probably keep them in the same clothes. The kitsune has jellyfish hair that glows blue with her eyes, hollow eyeliner and a regular kitsune mask, and the bunny has tech wear style and a scar on her mask and face. It means to me that regardless of what lighting they're in, they'll always be recognisable. So let's take a minute, you can grab a sketchbook or just use your imagination. If you have an original character in mind, that's great, but if you don't, that's okay too. You can still answer these questions to guide your way. Remember the question from the beginning of the video? How do I make a good original character? For me, and the advice I'd give to you, is to ask yourself who, what, how, where, and why. Who is your original character? What is their goal? How will they achieve it? Where are they? Why did they end up here? If you can answer all of these questions about your character, congratulations, you've started your journey to world building. I'd love to hear your answers in the comments, so let's share all of our character stories. Let's talk about the challenges of character and world building. You don't want to overdo it. Sometimes simpler is better and less is more. Start small and build up from there. Start off with one element, maybe it's a kitsune mask. Start building a character around that. What's their gender? Are they human? What hair will they have? What style of clothes will they wear? Along with the way you can start answering questions like why they wear the mask and change their design, and that's okay. Character designs change all the time, so just embrace it. If you find yourself at a block and can't think of anything, you're probably getting burnt out. It's okay to take a break, it's okay to step back and stop thinking about it. Inspiration comes when you least expect it. You could be watching your favourite show and see something you want to incorporate into your art or character's story. Sometimes trying something new can help too. For me, that was practicing perspective. When I couldn't think of something to fill the space, I used mushrooms and foliage, which ultimately led to an overgrown store, which led me to the world I made for my kitsunes. So don't rush, don't worry, and just enjoy the process of creating something. I would recommend looking at how other people do it, such as Tolkien, like we discussed earlier in the video, and replicate their process. Learning from the masters is the best way to do it after all. Overall, it's okay for things to change, it's okay to take a step back, and it's okay to not know the full story yet. There is no right way to approach characters and world building. You'll find your own approach that works for you. I hope I've answered the question of how do I make a good original character. The most important thing to take from this video is that creating is supposed to be fun. You can learn from everything, everyone, and every experience you have. I hope you liked this video. Make sure to share your character story in the comments below. Let's build a supportive community. Thank you so much for spending time here with me today. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to see more videos like this, and if you're interested in following along with my own characters and artwork, make sure to follow me on Instagram, which will be linked below. See you next week. Bye!